Hey, what's up, y'all? Today is March 18th, and Marcos and I are officially caught up on X-Aid. It took long enough for both of us, but here we are. We have currently watched up to episode 22. Episode 23 is about to air, if not is currently airing in Japan. We're not Japanese, nor do we speak or read the language, so sadly for us, we're going to have to wait until it comes out subbed in a few days, because I bullied him into watching it now that I'm here for the week. Yeah, so we're up through episode 22. We thought we'd do a little discussion on it, and if we don't talk about something in a future episode, it's because we are only on 22. That is all that is currently subbed at the moment. Yeah, with that being said, let's talk about some stuff. There are going to be spoilers, by the way, so if you are intent on watching X-Aid and you haven't started it, I cannot recommend it enough. I implore you to watch it before you listen to this. But if you have and you're caught up like us, finally, then here we are. So, what do you think about X-Aid so far?
Alright, before we really get into it, once again, a lot of people think I hate X-Aid.
You don't?
I don't hate X-Aid. Even when I only watched episode 1, I did not hate X-Aid. I said several times, I know it's a good show, I like it, I've just not caught up with it until recently.
So you hate X-Aid?
And now that we've caught up with it, I can honestly say it is almost as good as Gaim. I'm pretty sure it will surpass Gaim very, very easily. But as of right now, episode 22, it's almost there. Okay, so I guess we should start from the beginning.
Okay, so when mommy and daddy love each other very much.
Oh my gosh.
I'm kidding. So, the beginning of X-Aid, at first I thought it was going to be terrible because of the suit designs. I should have learned my lesson from Gaim because everyone said that the fruits were stupid, and then look what happened. So I should have taken that as a sign that X-Aid was going to be one of the best seasons, if not the best season of all time, which it's shaping up to be in my opinion. But at the very beginning, Doctor Motif, what do you think about it?
That's one thing that turned me off from X-Aid, why I didn't want to keep watching. There are several other reasons, but that's one of the main reasons. Video games, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I love video games. Video games are my life besides Toku and music. I love video games. And then I heard the Doctor Motif, oh, it's just gonna be a doctor drama that just so happens to have video games. We'll get more into that later. But I didn't want the Doctor Motif. Nobody really expected them to be doctors, right? It was just video games, but it really works. And I love how it works, but in the beginning, I didn't like the Doctor Motif. That's just pretty much what I'm going to say right now.
I didn't either at first. I thought a video game motif would be cool if the suits weren't so stupid looking, but and like the doctor thing, I was pretty cold on. Like it was kind of missing, but it works. It works fantastically, and I think it's probably one of the best parts of the season. I was very skeptical at first, especially in the first episode or two, but by episode 2 or 3, I audibly said to Marcos, hey, I'm actually starting to like this whole doctor thing. I think you remember that.
Yeah, I remember.
And it plays an important role into how the story progresses and into the characters, especially in how they interact with each other, so I think that's very cool. I think it's not that relatable because I don't have a PhD in medicine, but yeah, so I liked it at least.
Oh, I did want to bring up, I know we're going to start from the beginning, but I am going to keep talking about more about it as we go on. So, the Doctor Motif really works, and like I said, it is a doctor drama with video games, but it does it very well, and I love the tropes for each character too. Taiga is the unlicensed doctor who lost his doctoring license, and Hiro is the doctor that doesn't care about his patients, but he does love to do his old doctor thing.
He's a genius surgeon.
Yeah, he's a genius surgeon. I love everything about that too, and the Doctor Motif just works. I don't know how else to put it, but just like that guy from Bethesda, it just works.
The Doctor Motif, I absolutely love it. I love Brave. We'll talk about that again in a second, but he's shaping up to be one of my favorite secondary writers, and the reason for that is because of his whole surgeon thing. Like a lot of times we'll see the secondary writers who are just like, I don't care about feelings, I don't have feelings, I just care about getting the job done. Like Baron, who is another one of my favorite writers, and at first I thought, oh, he's just going to be another Baron. He is similar to Baron in terms of attitude, but I absolutely love Hiro. I think he's stealing the show in a lot of the episodes he's in. He's getting a lot of character development, even this early on. His character is very different from what he was at the beginning of the season, and I think a lot of that has to do with his interactions with the other characters. But in terms of Doctor motifs, I love how he has a sword, and he refers to it as his scalpel. I think that's just really cool, like call back to the whole Doctor thing, because in some seasons, I don't really have a for instance, but in some seasons they'll have two motifs running at the same time and they never really interact with each other. But you get a sense here that them being doctors isn't just their occupation when they're not Kamen Riders, but their being doctors is actually a part of what they're doing in the suits. And I think that's a very cool thing. I think Toei has thus far outdone themselves with it. I imagine people were skeptical about the whole Doctor motif at first. People probably were excited about the whole video game thing, but both of those things, I think even especially the whole Doctor thing, works so well, and it is making the season something far greater than I think we've seen before.
I'll get more into Hero later, but I think we should talk about the other side of the motif, the video game motif. Again, I was super excited. I love video games. And when I saw the designs, I thought, oh, that's so cool. They're finally going for something different. And I know people don't like the eyes that look like actual eyes because it has strayed so far away from what makes a Kamen Rider a Bugman karate champion. But I love what they're doing with the designs. They are very video gamey, but my only complaint is that they are video game characters and they are made by the same quote-unquote company, but I hate how they look so alike. You can't compare Call of Duty to Mario. They're two different things. They have two completely different designs, but when I see Kamen Rider Brave and X8 together, I feel like, oh, they're probably going to be in the same game, but they're supposed to be two complete different games. And I understand that they want to unify a whole design thing, but if it's a video game motif, I'd rather they look different. I'd rather Snipe look like a whole military person, and he kind of does, but he also looks like he belongs in the same game that X8 and Laser and Brave do. And that's the only complaint I have about the whole video game thing. Everything else, fantastic. I love how they have power-ups in the field. I love how they summon blocks and chests. I love how they're actually able to use those power-ups for their fights. I love the whole sound effects. I love the hit things that you see. And this is the thing you saw in the Ghost Summer movie, which they didn't bring back, but I'm okay with. They had this whole X8 versus Monster of the Week thing, and it would have like a split screen, then it would go fight, and then it would say KO at the end. I thought that was cool, and I don't mind it not being in the whole show, but I love that they're going all out with the video game design.
I think it works really well. I think my biggest complaint with it, and it's really nitpicking, like, it's not something that's detrimental to the story in any way, shape, or form, but level 1 is just really ugly.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't really like it. I think that they should just completely skip over it, which now they're starting to. At least normally, instead of just doing that, now they'll just say, okay, going with level 2 right now, instead of wasting time in level 1. And that's also because the monsters are starting to separate themselves immediately in their evolved forms. Yeah, I really like the whole game thing. I think that the show never forgets the fact that they have this motif running.
Yes.
So you're never taken out and you're never thinking, oh, this is just a Kamen Rider season, this is just monsters fighting dudes in tights. You're always aware of the fact that this is supposed to be in a video game, and I think it's done very well. I think the CG for the game disease monsters, especially in the first episode or two, is kind of hit or miss. But other than that, I like the suit designs a lot. I love the gosh shots. I love the sounds that they make so much. I love it. I love it so much. But yeah, I love that. I love the concept of all the riders being representative of the different genres of video games. I think that's really, really cool. I love the level up system. It's a little bit jagged at points. I mean, well, it's really jagged.
We'll
at
get
points,
into that.
But I love the concept of the whole video game thing. I'm a big fan of video games, believe it or not. And it works really well. I know we had spent a few minutes talking about how the Doctor motif works really well, and how the video game motif works really well. But one thing that we haven't mentioned thus far is that they work so well together. Like,
for sure.
They complement each other in a way that I can't really even describe. It's so fantastic to see that these two motifs that have nothing to do with each other, they are so different, so radically far apart from each other, but they are working so well in tandem, and I absolutely love that. So thus far, they have handled it so well. Normally, a season would just kind of drop that motif. Like, Gaim didn't care about fruits or the whole Pokemon collecting thing, like, 10 episodes in. I understand why. It was still a fantastic season, which I loved, but I can say almost for sure that, fingers crossed, knock on wood, that if they keep up what they have so far, this will be the greatest season Kamen Rider has ever seen. And maybe the greatest it will ever see, because it is just that good.
Before we get into the story parts, I do want to backtrack a little bit to what you said about the CGI. I've said before, especially in my Everything Wrong with X8 Episode 1 video, that the CGI was really good in Ghost. Well, it wasn't like the best, but it was a step up. But then it became really bad again during X8, and a lot of people pointed out, oh, it was probably just an art decision that 8-bit video game CGI probably doesn't even look that bad, and that is not an excuse to make it look as ugly as it does. Like, even during episode somewhere in the 20s or right before 20, they had the CGI monsters come back again, and it still looks really bad, and I'm pretty sure they could have designed it not like Play-Doh. And that's another nitpick I have, but at the same time, I can get past it. They don't do the whole CGI thing too often, so I can let past it. So the story thing, I guess we'll get into that. The doctor thing, like I said, it is a doctor drama, but it combines itself with video games. I don't even want to say too perfectly. It just fits like a puzzle.
And it's still Kamen Rider Season 2.
And it's still a Kamen Rider season.
They still managed to pull that off. I am so amazed.
At its core, Kamen Rider is about loss and tragedy, and about these heroes that go through with that. And X8 does that so well.
It's so good.
With the doctor thing. Like doctors, it's not all happy, you save the patient, everything's at the end. People will die. And that's another motif, underlying motif that X8 has. People will die, no matter what. And I think it's subtle, but it works very well for all this. Like, Emu Hojo is a pediatrician at first. He's basically new to this, and he loves video games. And well, we all love video games. I'm pretty sure doctors in Japan play video games, and I think it could work in the beginning, but it does work overall. So Emu's playing video games, and then his whole life quite literally revolves around being a video game Kamen Rider. And then Hiro gets involved, and he doesn't play video games. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. But he's still involved with his whole doctor thing, even though he doesn't play video games. Taiga, he's an unlicensed doctor. I'm sure he didn't have time for video games, but he was still a Kamen Rider that just happened to have video games in it. And every single one of them experienced a loss and a tragedy just like a Kamen Rider. Wow, that is mind-blowing.
It works so well. And this whole, motif of the doctor thing, I think especially, you had mentioned that, they are at all times focused on preserving the lives of their patients, right? But they managed to execute, Toei, they managed to execute that in a way that it works well in the context of the video game motif, where I mentioned the person whose death really was in a second, but it works so well in the context of a Kamen Rider season, where the heroes will experience loss. People will die because it is that serious of a game. It's to an extent where it's not even a game anymore. It's actually people are gambling with their lives here, and that works really well. It works in a way that it aids the character progression and the character development of all the people in the show, especially M. But they're all doctors, and their job as doctors is to preserve the lives of their patients. That is number one. And now that ties into the whole also being a Kamen Rider thing, where a lot of them treat the games not as games and not as a separate entity from their day job of being doctors, but they treat the whole all the Goshots and the whole Kamen Rider thing as a tool to help them in saving lives, which is what they are supposed to do as doctors. So that crosses as well when their patients get infected with the game disease. Also in the context of their friends and the people alongside them who are risking their lives, they need to help save them. It's so fantastic. And can we talk about Kiria now?
Episode 1 is usually regarded generally as it's supposed to be, what's to come. It's going to be like the big super cool thing. But it's going to be weird to say that episode 1 of X8 is probably the weakest link it has in the entire show. But it is a very good episode 1. I love how it just gets into it, but it also explains Emu's a doctor, and Heroes and Taiga and Gem are also part of this. You see a bit of Kiria at the end, and then it just rolls up all the way to like a pinnacle of perfectness as the story goes on, and the pacing is absolutely phenomenal. Agito, oh my gosh, has the worst pacing. X8 has the best pacing. A lot of Kamen Rider shows have the 2-episode arc. You see the monster episode 1, they figure out how to fight it. Episode 2, they fight it with their super cool power of friendship. X8 only does 1 episode for what they're trying to go for, but each episode has an overall arc to them, overall story to them. So episode 1, Emu becomes a Kamen Rider. Episode 2, we see Hero. He becomes a Kamen Rider. He's been a Kamen Rider and we see him. Episode 3, Taiga. Episode 4, Laser. And then it just keeps going on like that. And they're not slow. We see introductions. We see new gashats. And everything after that, up until episode 12, is like a brand new power-up. But that power-up goes along with the story. Like some power-ups save people in a very collective way as a tool. Other power-ups have to do with Kamen Rider Gem becoming more evil. He has a new plan that has to do with this gashat. And then we reach the turning point of episode 12.
12. Oh my goodness.
Kiria has been one of the 4 main, or I guess 5 main writers of the first 12 episodes. He's another doctor that just happens to lose someone because of the Bugster infection.
He's a coroner.
And he was a coroner. And I think Kiria's story is one of the best Kamen Rider has to offer. Because, you see, at first, Kiria is just some slick guy that wants to find out more about the Bugster infection. And he lies his way to the top. But then you realize he's a coroner. He has to learn how to lie to make people feel better. And that's his overall arc to him. He lies to his friends, he lies to Emu because he wants them to feel better and not know about the tragedy of the Bugster infection. And that hit me so hard when Kiria finally tells the truth to Emu that Kamen Rider Gem was the main bad guy, the big bad of Gem Corporation. Of Dan, yeah, Dan Kuroto is the big bad. And he finally tells the truth. But then we see Parad take the place of Gem when he's about to die, and then everybody sees that, and it hit me so hard when Kiria, in his mind, thinks about his friend dying, but then he has to tell the truth for once. But then it's not Dan, and everybody sees that he has lied again, and probably the biggest lie that he's had.
He wasn't even lying,
and he wasn't even lying.
But then he just went along with it anyway, just so he didn't. Oh,
and he went along with the lie or the truth or the lie. And it hit me really hard, like, Kiria.
That is the single most mature thing a character has ever done, I think. In at least recent memory. It absolutely just blew my mind that he would do that. Just to, like, I don't even know exactly what the motive is, but I think it's amazing that he would do that over just saying, oh no, like, I swear it was him or whatever. Just
exactly.
He went along with it, just so they could keep thinking in the way that they were. And can we talk about episode 12?
And then we reach episode 12.
Oh my god.
Kiria finally able to piece together everything all his life ever since the Bugster infection happened. He finally talks to Dan Kuroto's dad in prison and he pieces everything together. But that was his downfall. Because Dan Kuroto did not want anyone to find out about this certain secret. So the only way to shut him up was to kill him off. And everything was built up so perfectly. Like, I didn't expect Kiria to die. Ever since, I think it was like episode 8 or something, Dan wanted to build this gashat to finally kill someone. But to do that, he needed the data of a dead person. during those episodes, he was trying to kill a kid to get the data, and I thought, oh, he's probably just gonna kill the kid, and none of the Kamen Riders are gonna die. They're the main characters.
He got the data from himself, though.
Yeah, and then Dan, quote unquote, dies himself after he gets hit by a final attack. Ever since Kamen Rider Gem's life gauge reached 0, so he got his death data on himself, and then with that data, he shut up Kiriya by killing him, and that was really unexpected to me.
I was really upset because I think at a point I realized, okay, I know where this is going. I like this character, so they're going to kill him off because they're going to. Because that would be the most effective thing to do. And as soon as we got to episode 12, I thought, okay, they probably are going to do this, but I really don't want it to happen. I'm going to really hope that they don't do it. And then they were fighting, and I was like, oh, they're probably going to do it. So oh my goodness. And then they did, and I thought, okay, hopefully some Deus Ex Machina is going to come along, and it's not going to be real, and then he just faded away. And I thought, well, shit. Wow. No way. They actually went through with it. Just like what happened with Kurokage in episode 14 of Gaim, where the season completely just went off the rails, is what happened in X8 here.
Except the difference is that Kurokage was just any other character. He barely had any characterization, but Kiriya had
I cared about him. I loved him. He was the best.
Kiriya had like 8 episodes for us to learn about him, to care about him, and we had this big like truck hit us when he kept continuing with his lie, even though he was telling the truth. And at the same time, I feel like they had to do that to give Kiriya the most character because he was gonna die anyway. In episode 12, really early on. And knowing that, it still hit me, knowing that the underlying motif of X8 is that people will die. No matter who they are, even if they're one of the best characters on the show, Kiriya's death started like this ongoing rail of, okay, here's the real season. It's not exactly what you expected. It's going to be even better.
Yeah. I think that was the point when Toei told the collective audience that, hey, we're not messing around. Just to let you guys know, like, you thought this was going to be a fun show about, like, video games and stuff. No, that's not the case. This is going to be one of the, if not the best season we're ever going to make and have ever made thus far. So, buckle up.
A lot of people said that the first 12 episodes were kind of hard to get to. I know our friends said that. I'm not going to say any names. Yeah, but I still like them. I like them even more than Gaim's first 12 episodes, and I love those. So I don't see how it's slow. I mean, they gain something new every single episode. We learn something new every single episode. But I guess episode 12 really was the turning point where everything pieced together and then continues on from that. But I think we should really talk about more characters besides Kiriya.
Let's talk about Brave.
Brave is honestly getting up there to one of my favorites. I mean, Kagami and Saw Sword is still my favorite, but Brave is getting up there. I wish I could say the same about Snipe, but we'll get to him later. Brave acts very similar to Baron. He's cold on the outside. And while Baron had a tragic backstory, yeah, like his parents are dead and he had to be part of Yggdrasil, Brave, I think, feels way more personal to not only him, but to us, because we see in multiple episodes that Snipe or Taiga had to do with Brave's girlfriend's death. And again, another underlying motif, people will die this season. And, well, in general. And every little piece we get from ongoing episodes, I feel puts us a lot closer to Hiro. I don't think he plays video games, like I said before, but he still takes his job very seriously. He's still a doctor. He still does surgery. He still does everything he can to save the patient. And he doesn't want to have his feelings out because of his past. He didn't have a lot of feelings towards his girlfriend. His girlfriend wanted Hiro to eat sweets, and he didn't want to do that. But ever since she died, he feels like he needs to be colder. He needs to care less about the patient, more about his job. And he still eats sweets because she died, and that's the last thing she gave him. And that really hits you the more you think about it. Dallas?
I love his character. I think he is getting up to be my favorite secondary rider in history. Maybe even one of my favorite Kamen Riders like ever, which is something crazy to say, right? But I love his character. I think his character is getting a lot of development, which is really, really cool. Like, you'll see him doing things now that you wouldn't have seen him doing 10, even 5 episodes ago. Like, there was one point where Emu got infected by he still is, but the Bugster virus took him over. So he wasn't really paying attention to his job as a doctor, and he didn't really care about the patient. So Hiro decided that he was going to fill in, and it was treated almost as a little bit of like comic relief, like him talking to the patient to try to cheer them up. But what you forget is that while it might have been a little bit of a funny scene to see this really cold, expressionless guy talking to a patient about like her dreams or whatever, that is something that he would not have done at the beginning of the season had he not talked to Emu as much as he has. And that's another point that I wanted to bring up, is that Hiro and Emu have, without a doubt, the best chemistry of the main 2 riders in all of Kamen Rider, I think. Like, even, like, I loved Kabuto, I loved Kagami. I think they're 2 of my favorite riders of all time. Kagami is my number 1 secondary rider, at least for right now. We'll see how Brave fares in a little while. But they didn't really have that much chemistry to them. Like, they felt really independent of one another, in a way. But here, in X-Aid, both of them are progressing as characters because of each other. And they complement each other really well. I love their writing. I love that they're starting to kind of rub off on each other, in a sense, where now Emu is taking his job as a doctor a little bit more seriously, and he's a little bit less naive and kind of haphazard with how he does things. And Hiro is now starting to care about patients a bit more. He's not as cold. He's more open to things, and he's starting to actually care about people. Like how he actually cared about Emu. He's starting to compliment him, saying, like, you're actually really good at killing the Bugster virus or whatever. And while he still, has his really stone cold Steve Austin, I'm kidding. He has this, like, stone cold, expressionless face about him. He's starting to progress more, and the characters are changing, which is something that I think says something very good about the season, about the writing, and about Toei. Because a lot of times, especially in Sentai and in a lot of Kamen Rider seasons, the characters, they'll go through things, but it's more things happening to them and them just going from point A to point B, rather than them actually changing and progressing as characters, not just getting power-ups, but changing as characters to meet the challenges that they're faced with in a new way.
I completely agree. This word is thrown around a lot, but Hiro and Emu are very dynamic towards each other. And the journey for Hiro and even Emu, their characters from point A to point B is more like it wobbles around, going up and down. Like, what are they thinking on the inside? What are they going to do? And that's another thing that I like about X-Aid, is that you don't know what's going to happen. Like, unless you look at the scans or whatever, which I'm trying to avoid. Unless you know what's going to happen, everything's a surprise. Like, I didn't really expect Hiro to want to talk to the patient in that one episode. I didn't expect Hiro to give Emu a compliment. I don't expect Hiro to do much else besides be the stone cold surgeon that he is. But then he grows as a character, and he learns from Emu, and Emu learns from him. And I think Hiro is just one of the best characters we have had in a very long time. And his suit design also really helps.
Oh, his suit design and the concept of the whole RPG thing, and the fact that he refers to his sword as a scalpel, and he's always talking like a surgeon because he doesn't play games. I love it so much.
Yeah.
And Tattle Fantasy is so cool. I love the gosh shot and the belt jingles for it. Oh my god, I love it.
Oh, which I want to bring up. Specifically when he gets Tattle Fantasy, he's trying to get the gas shot from Dan, and he specifically says, if Emu can do it, I can too. And I think that is a very big line. That it was kind of like a throwaway line, but it is very big to show that he has been learning ever since episode 2 from Emu.
That's really cool that they're doing that. Like, they're actually learning from each other, and they're progressing, and I am sounding like a broken record, but I love Hiro.
So let's step away from.
If he dies, I'm going to be pissed. By the way, if he dies, which he's probably going to in like the last episode or something like that, I'm going to write Toei a very strongly worded letter. So if you guys don't want a letter that has angry words in it, then you best not kill him off. So,
but I think we should step away from the Hiro and Emu show and get to the other Kamen Rider.
I don't really care about him. He's interesting, kind of, but I just don't care. I don't like him.
Snipe has so much going for him. Taiga, I thought he would be really cool. I thought he'd be one of my favorites, but they don't do anything with him. It's like they try to build up something. He has flashbacks to when his license got taken away, but they don't do anything with it. And the unfortunate thing is that they're saving it for the inevitable V Cinema or special. And I guess you can do that, but in the actual show, if you give this much characterization to to Hero, why not do the same thing for Taiga? And I think that's a complaint a lot of people have, is that Taiga doesn't really do anything. Like, I think more people like Hero way more than Taiga, which is weird because Bang Bang Shooting has been selling more than Title Quest. But,
really?
Yeah, surprisingly. But Taiga doesn't do much. A lot of people that I've been reading on forums and stuff have been saying, "Oh, he's a collector of gashats, so he's gonna steal everything, single thing." And I was thinking, "Oh, he's gonna be like a cooler Daiki Kaido from Decade. He's gonna be a gashat hunter. That's really cool." And he steals like 2, and like every 10 episodes.
He just says he's gonna steal them. He doesn't actually do it.
Yeah, he says he's gonna do things, and he steals like 2, and then he doesn't do anything.
And he gives them back.
Yeah. And I like the demeanor of him. Like, he's stone cold because of his past, and that's something else that I really don't like. Once again, they build up things, but they don't do anything. I like the backstory he's given. His license is taken away because he failed to kill Graphite, and Graphite killed Hero's girlfriend, which is another thing. The domino effect. One thing happens, everything else falls down, and that's really cool. But it's only talked about for like 5 minutes total out of 22 episodes. I do like the design though. It's cool. And another thing I want to say, I keep saying they don't do anything with him because of things they bring up and still don't do anything with. There was one line that says, "Oh, he's using the prototype Bang Bang Simulations gashat," and they say that, but we don't get anything out of it. And then later he says, "Oh, I used this another old prototype a long time ago," and no one talks about it unless they're watching the special. So again, they don't do anything with Taiga. And I'll bring up Nico in a bit after you say something, Dallas.
But we have like 28-ish episodes left, depending. So there is a lot of time for them to flesh him out a lot more, and I think that they have the potential. Like, what they've done thus far, at least with Taiga, is kind of lay a bunch of little hints that can all individually lead out into pretty satisfying storylines and backstory information for him. So there's a lot to be done with him, and they just haven't done it yet. And that could just be a fault of the fact that it's only episode 22. It's relatively early in the season, almost mid-season point, but really, thus far, he's not that interesting. I don't really care about him much. I think he's cold in the way that... Well, he's just cold, but like I find it less interesting than the coldness that Hero has, because Taiga's doesn't develop and change over time.
Exactly.
I don't think he's really had any character development beyond just his backstory being revealed a little bit here and there, but he hasn't progressed enough as a character for me to care. And again, that might just be a fault of the fact that it's not even the middle point in the season yet, so they still have time, and who knows, they might end up fleshing him out to the point that he becomes one of my favorite tertiary riders of all time, one of my favorite Kamen riders of all time. They might kill him off for the sake of the plot, I don't know, but at least for right now, like as of episode 22, there's just not much for him. Now, Nico, I hate she adds nothing to the story. She is the single worst part of X-Aid by a long shot. Her voice is annoying. Her character is really annoying. She's pointing that she doesn't add anything to Taiga or the season overall. Taiga isn't a better character or more interesting because of her. She just serves to kind of occasionally push a little bit of exposition out because she'll ask about something or say something which Taiga will have to respond to, which he wouldn't have said otherwise on his own. But still, she's useless there. She's really annoying. I cannot stand her.
The introduction of Nico, I thought she'd be cool, but then that dropped down almost immediately. She was there. It was pretty early on. I think I want to say like
8-ish.
No, really 8. Oh yeah, but
She like appeared a few times before doing anything.
yeah. Okay. Anyway, I thought she'd be cool, but she doesn't do anything like Taiga, and I think she just brings down Taiga even more than he already has. I understand what Dallas is saying. I understand what you're saying, that we still have more than half of the season to go, and while I would like that, it's just kind of weird to have the Emu and Hiro show like the first half, and then the second half be the Emu and Taiga show, if they're even gonna do that. That's just really weird writing. Why even have Taiga there at all? Unless you like, you could literally just say another doctor couldn't save Hiro's girlfriend. It doesn't specifically have to be Taiga. But anyway, Nico adds nothing. She doesn't have anything interesting to say. It would have been cool if she could become Snipe, like when she tried to use the gas shot. I think that would have been, whoa, what? How did she get this? What was she doing with this? With this like surgical thing to become a writer? And we get nothing out of it. It was just a waste of time. Oh wait, no, she gets a bugster out of it. That's it. And then Taiga doesn't do anything. I feel like they're building up to something, yeah, but if it's not spectacular, which I'm hoping it would be, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it'll be good. But if this builds up to nothing, I'm going to be very disappointed, and that would probably be the weakest thing X8 has going for it. They do have the occasional line, like in one episode when Emu finished out the monster of the week, Nico's like, Snipe's gonna get you next, and then Taiga's shaking like, yeah, I'll get your gas shot. I thought that was pretty funny. But other than that, they have nothing together besides like fan art. I'm hoping they become good characters. Hoping. But for now, blah.
I don't think Taiga really adds much. I think Nico detracts a little bit, if anything. And if they have to do anything, just kill off Taiga. I don't care about him. He doesn't add that much, in my opinion. Like, if they wanted to do that to drive the plot, I'd be like, hey, that's cool that they would do that. And then if they just want to hyper-develop Hiro and Emu for the rest of the show, cool. I'm not going to complain about that.
Yeah,
I love them.
I'm okay with that.
But, yeah. Is that just about everything?
No. We still have way more to go, Dallas.
Really?
Way more to go. One of the best villains
oh, yeah.
that we've had in a very long time. Ooh. Dan Kuroto is someone I want to punch in the face. And that's a good thing.
He's like Michi, but better.
In the beginning, I thought he'd be, he's just a supporting character that gives a gas shot when he feels like it. He's the president of Gem Corporation, the developers of the gas shots, the games that they make. And I thought he'd be a supporting character. You know, he'd help out Emu and the writers, give them gas shots when they needed. And then he turned out to be the villain.
He does a good job of it, too. He is the single best villain we've seen since... I think he's even better than the Gaim villains, honestly. Like, I think he is probably one of the best villains. No, okay, he's the best villain in Neo Heisei. I can say that with absolute certainty. He is the best villain in Neo Heisei.
I really like the Roimudes as villains, but I think Dan and the Bugsters are probably even better. Way better. Because what the Roimudes had was like, they need to survive, and just like Gaim, they need to survive. That's why they take over people and like they want to take over the planet. But Dan, he's crazy. He's insane. Not just because he's a crazy, insane character, but because that's just his development he had since the beginning. And it all started with Emu. Emu sent Dan, when they were young, Emu sent Dan a letter about Emu's ideas for a game, and then Dan, and this would make sense for a young person, didn't want someone else to be better than him, so he tore up everything Emu ever dreamed of, and then he infected Emu because he was jealous. And I think that makes sense for a character like Dan. He's been developing games since he was little. Of course he'd go crazy. He wouldn't know how to socialize, but he went crazy to the point where he kills people. And I know this is going to sound weird considering I hate one-dimensional villains, but I think it's done right with X-Aid. Dan was crazy since the beginning, and we saw that, but we didn't have any backstory to him, no motif. Then we see the motif, and I think, yeah, that makes sense for Dan, for him to start going crazy. He doesn't know what to do. He's been like a shut-in all his life. What's he gonna do besides kill people? And I mean, I don't know anyone that's been a shut-in and wants to kill people, but I feel like Dan does that execution pretty perfectly, and that's quite literally too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, he doesn't really have that much backstory or anything to flesh out his character, and his motive for doing this is really bad. Like, it's objectively bad, because it's pretty much just no motive at all. He just wants to do it just because. Any other season, any other setup, any other character, none of that would have worked. But somehow, it works perfectly. And I really don't understand how that actually happened, because he was set up, like, if you just take his character and just plaster it verbatim to a different character in a different season, it wouldn't work. It would just be terrible. Everyone would say this is a one-dimensional villain that has no backstory, or not no backstory, but he has no character development. He is a bad villain, etc., etc. But somehow in Xaid, it works. It just works. He is by far one of the greatest villains in Kamen Rider. He is threatening, very, very threatening. He is scary. He is interesting, and he is crazy. You never know what he's going to do next. You never know if what he's doing here or there is playing into this plan. He's always one step ahead of everyone else. He feels, and also the fact that he is more or less like a Dark Xaid, where the original Genmu design is just like a Xaid, but like Dark Xaid. A little bit different for Dangerous Zombie, but like still, it looks like the dark version of Mighty Action X. The fact that he is like that proves that he is the polar opposite of Emu, where Emu is so focused on saving people and doing right, which again seems like it would be one-dimensional and poor character development for a protagonist in a season, but again, it works. He is the polar opposite of that, where all he wants is just malice and chaos and bad things to happen to people. He serves as such a good opposition to the protagonist. So he is the antithesis to Emu, and it works so well. They could not have had a better villain for Xaid, no matter how hard they tried. It's just such a good show, such a fantastic main antagonist. Even the supporting antagonists are fantastic, like we haven't seen almost ever. Like, even look at Drive, which is one of my favorite seasons, if not my favorite. The generals for the Roidmudes were kind of dumb. And, like, they were powerful or whatever, but, like, Brain was kind of stupid. I didn't like him. Heart was pretty cool at a point. But other than that, I just didn't like him that much. Here, like, Pallid. Can we talk about Pallid for a bit?
Go for it.
I love his character. I think that he's really interesting in a sense where he's kind of insane and just does things, like, really haphazardly, but not in the Dan Kuroto sense of with an evil intent, but just because it's entertaining him. He is doing all these bad things, but he doesn't think of it as doing bad things. He thinks of it as just kind of doing whatever because he doesn't care about things. That's why he's not just doing evil, but he's also turning on the bad guys, not quote unquote,
his own allies.
Guys. His own allies. He is killing when they are getting in his way, or if they're doing something that he doesn't seem fit, he will go against them. He almost kills Dan this way. I mean, not kills because he's immortal, quote unquote, but it's why he almost kills Dan, because he didn't want him to kill Emu because he wants to have him as a rival. So he is a villain, but he's also an anti-hero in that sense, where he has his own motives that only vaguely line up with Dan's. So they're on the same side, but there's a sense that that is only a temporary thing, and that they aren't, at the end of the day, really working together because they have very different motives, are very different characters, and don't really like each other. So I think that could change at any moment. I think in 15 to 20 episodes, Pallid could be a good guy. He could be on the side of Emu and Brave and all of them working against Dan because in a few episodes Dan might do something to piss him off. We've seen that happen, and that might be explored more where he has his own motives, which if they don't line up with someone, he will have no hesitation to go against them. It just so happens that for the time being, those motives kinda sorta go along with what Dan wants because he is going to be able to provide him with more powers and more entertainment. So, yeah, I love his character. I think there's a lot of room to make him a good guy. He could be a bad guy. He could be one of the main antagonists. He could die off at a point. There's a lot of room for him to do cool things.
And I agree with that. I'm probably going to go on a really long rant here.
Go ahead.
Well, not a rant, but more of a tangent. I love Pallid too, and I agree completely with what you say. And I'd rather he not become a good guy, but I understand if he does. I'm okay with it. I just rather he not. It's more interesting to see him play out with his own plans, his own ambitions. But Pallid is really cool, and I also love his writer design. I think Paradox is one of the coolest designed writers in that show. And it's really cool, and plus the gas shot has really cool sounds. And I really like Pallid, and the thing I really love about him is that we don't know what he's thinking, besides that he has his own ambitions. He does go against Dan, he does fight Emu, he does fight against the other writers because that's his goals, but we don't know 100% what he's thinking at that moment. He could do anything at any time, and I think having an unidentified variable during all of this madness that X8 has so far is very interesting. And not only Pallid, but Dan are good villains because they're not only strong and very threatening, but because they're also smart and we don't know what's going to go on with them. Which is something I want to bring up with Graphite, the other villain that we've had for the first few episodes. I'm probably going to spoil something here, by the way, which has been shown in the scans. Pallid was, I guess he sets up people. He sets up like this is how the show's gonna be. Like he does die pretty early on, and he does seem threatening. He does get the Dragonite Hunter Z gas shot. He is cool, but then he dies off. But then Dan has a really surprising plan that I didn't see coming, was that Graphite comes back.
Really?
That's in the scans. And that's the only scan I've seen besides the toy catalog.
Actually, I just looked him up because I forgot who Graphite was.
Oh.
It's actually Graphite. I just completely forgot, but yeah.
Graphite comes back, but we don't know why. We could probably get him for his data or whatever. But that's another thing I like, is that he is another unidentified variable we don't know about. But at the same time, he doesn't do much besides set up certain things for X8 in the beginning. That could change later on, since he does come back. But I think I will enjoy Graphite with his return. Right now, he was kind of bland, but I'm sure I'll enjoy him later.
Nothing but wild cards on the opposing side.
Like, exactly.
That's all the bad guys, just all of them. Dan, he's the main bad guy, but he's a wild card. You don't know what he's going to be doing. Pallid, wild card. You have no idea what he's going to be doing. You have no idea whose side he's going to be on in any given situation. Even I didn't know that Graphite was going to come back until he just mentioned it just now. But there's another, like you said, unidentified variable. There are so many things that could happen at any given point that I have no idea what's going to happen when I watch an episode. I don't know anything could happen at all. Like how in Gaim I wasn't expecting the straight up end of the world to happen, like episode 20 or whenever it was. I have no idea what's going to happen here. I literally have no good idea of what's going to happen beyond next episode. I mean, I saw the whole like, oh, coming up next episode thing, but beyond that, anything could happen. I have no idea. I could guess something and it could be completely something else out of left field. You never know what's going to happen, and I think that's good because it's not just your really like X8 overall isn't just your standard, okay, it's going to be good guy versus bad guy, and it's going to be monsters of the week, and it's going to be a really clear character progression of every like 2 or 3 episodes. He's going to get an upgrade, and not that much else is going to happen, and then he's just going to go through Monster of the Week and Monster of the Week and then occasionally a general until after 48, 50 episodes, he finally has enough power-ups to beat the main baddie. I have no idea what's going to happen in X8. I couldn't even begin to predict, accurately at least, what will happen 20, 10, even 5 or 2 episodes from now. So it's one of those seasons where if all the episodes were already out, I would have been done with it by now. If I started them last week, I would have already been done, because there's just so much incentive to continue watching, and it's so interesting that I want to find out what happens next. And that is that sings the praises of a very, very good season, because it's very rare that something, especially in Tokusatsu, is so interesting that I actively want to find out more, and I'm very, very excited for what's to come.
One of the absolute best things I could say about X8 is that none of this would work in any other season. Gaim, I think, has really good villains. They have a really good motive behind them. But if you replace... I don't even remember the main big bad of Gaim for the Overlords. But if you replace the Overlords with, like, Dan, you're going to think, oh, it's just some other one-dimensional crazy guy. If you replace an Overlord with Pallid, you're going to think, oh, yeah, he's just going to do whatever, who cares? If you replace Heart with Pallid, you're going to be like, oh, well, whatever, it doesn't really work. He's just going to do whatever towards Shinosuke. But in X8, it just works perfectly, because everything is an unidentified variable. Every single little thing about the show, you don't know what's going to happen unless you watch the previews, which I implore you to not do that. And another thing is that the writers themselves are cool, and yeah, Taiga is probably the weakest of the writers, but I still think he is a cool character. He just needs to be explored more. And I can't say that about a lot of even Neo Heisei Season 2 seasons. I like Chase. I really did. I loved Chase, but he became an ally, and I thought, oh, God, again. And then if Pallid becomes a good guy, I think, oh, maybe he's going to be a good guy for, like, another episode. I don't know if he'll be evil again. And that's really cool. I love when shows make me think about it, and not just in a what's going to happen next way, but in a deeper way, because again, the motifs behind X8 are very subtle, but then when they hit you hard. Kiria, even Burgermon, I don't know what else to say about it besides it's surprising, and that's a very good thing about a show like this.
It's amazing. Everything, like Marco said, every component of the show would completely flop if it were in any other season. If you take out one component, the show would not work. Take out the Doctor motif, none of it would work. Take out the video game motif, none of it would work. Take out Brave, none of it would work. Everything works so well.
Even Taiga kind of works. As much as I complain about, much as I complained before, Taiga does have some reason to be there, and I think it does work. He just needs more character.
But he wouldn't work if he were in a different season. He just wouldn't, because everything in X8 works so well. I can hardly even describe how well everything works together. And I think that's the best thing about it, easily. I mean, it's a great season, has, great characters, great motifs. It's super interesting, and I'd be willing to venture to say that I have never been this excited to see what's going to happen next.
Agreed.
Never. And that was even, I watched Gaim from the first episode to the last episode without being behind by more than a week. So as soon as an episode would come out, I'd watch it and I'd be like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. That was not as interesting, and I was not as excited to see what would happen as I am now with X8, because there's so much going on, and there's so much that could happen that I'm curious to see what actually does, because there are so many doors that Toei could go through, so many ways they could handle this. It's just, the possibilities are infinite. There's so much to work with, and I very desperately hope, and I think, that Kamen Rider X8 will be the best Kamen Rider season of all time.
The doors open like Hero's transformation.
Oh, I love that. I love that he comes out of a little door and then he's like floating and it's great. I love it.
I think that's all we have to say, right?
Yeah, it's already been an hour.
Oh, support characters. Who cares? All right.
Yeah, I don't personally. So
that's it, right?
Yeah, I don't think any of them have watched this far. It's been an entire hour.
People actually sit through the podcasts I have. Surprisingly.
Really? What are y'all up to then? What are you guys doing? Actually, no. I understand that because like, if there's a podcast that I'm not that interested in, I'll just put it on in the background and then there's something to listen to for like an hour while I'm
exactly.
Playing Breath of the Wild, which is pretty good, by the way. Play Breath of the Wild if you haven't already. It's very good. I loved it. Yeah, probably the best Zelda game ever made in my opinion. But yeah, I'm sorry, this isn't the Zelda podcast. But
you want to make a Zelda podcast?
No. We spent literally the past 2 hours doing nothing but just talking about Toku. No.
That's an hour. What?
We had made the other one.
Oh, yeah. Dang.
Yeah. Just before this, we made a different podcast that was also an hour talking about Toku. And I said, don't worry, the X8 only podcast is only going to be like 20 minutes. There's no way that we could talk about one season that's not even halfway done for an entire hour. And here we are. It's an hour later. That was a good season.
Very good.
This has been Marcos.
And I'm Persona, and I'm out.